Our keynote speaker this morning is Dr. Jennifer Beller, and we welcome Dr. Beller here. She is a professor at Washington State University's College of Education. Her research interests include ethics and moral reasoning in athletics and other competitive environments. She's also a national leader in her research of the mind and body, the spiritual intersection between that cognitive knowledge and your motor, just knowing, and motor knowing, I guess. And she calls this bodily knowing. So it's kind of a fun little. She's been featured on Nightline, CNN, ESPN, and most likely now the Centralia Chronicle. Most impressive, however, is her ability to captivate students, whether young or in experience. So we, again, welcome Dr. Beller, and we are so fortunate to have her be able to take this time to come and speak with us today. So welcome.
Thank you, Christy.
Yes.
Well,
just as needed.
I've got a lavalier, so I can be short. Well, good morning and welcome. I am so excited to be here today. I have to tell you a little funny story. When Bobby called me and asked me if I would come over, and she said, it's going to be held at Centralia, and I'm like all excited because it's going to be held at, I can drive there, right? I don't have to fly there. So in my mind, she says, what's it going to take to get here? And I said, well, I just need to travel. Just tell me how to get there. And so last weekend, she calls me, kind of gets everything working, and all of a sudden I find out where Centralia really is. Now, you have to understand, I'm in North Idaho. That's where I live. So Centralia, center, Washington, between Ellensburg, Colville, center, right? No, I'm like over the mountains. So I quickly get everything together, and I find my way, and I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. It was just a wonderful drive over. But today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a program that we have started in one of the schools in Moscow, Idaho, where our son goes to school. It's a Catholic school called St. Mary's, and it's called Smart Kids. And this is an intersection of the mind and the body. And so I want to spend a little bit of time this morning talking about this program we do, how what you are currently doing intersects with this, and how we might be able to add to what you are doing and get you to think about it, because there are some things that we do all the time, and then we move out of early childhood into elementary grades and we forget it. And so today what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about why does early childhood get it and the rest of us don't. You all get it. You all move with your children. It's learning by doing. It's what Dewey talked about, learning by doing. And they're engaged, and you walk into an early childhood classroom, and they're totally immersed in it, and it's chaotic, but they're learning in that process. And you get into the college setting, and it looks very, very different where I am. But what I'm going to do today is try to remove a little bit of the fog. So when I drove over on Thursday, I drove through fog the whole way. And I left sun and got into fog. And there were times when I said, I know there's a mountain out here, but I'm just not sure where. And so I drove around, and I got to the top of White Pass, which I've never driven 12 before, and it was just a beautiful drive in the fog. And I get to the top, and I get over the top, and here's Mount Rainier. This is a picture I took on Thursday. Now, I know you think you have a mountain there. I'm here to tell you, it is really there. I haven't seen it since, but absolutely incredibly beautiful. But I thought it was fortuitous because what I want to do is I want to clear up a little bit of the fog about education. I want to clear it up and get into this bright blue sky, okay? So we go from moving beings into these sedentary seats. And if you look at these children here, they're sitting, trying to figure out what's going on, and they're not really moving. I mean, they're moving little pieces, but they're not really moving, and we want to know what's happening. So to understand Smart Kids and what we're doing with Smart Kids, we need to think about what it is that we've been doing in education and how did we get there. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, and bear with me, a little bit of philosophy, but I'm going to try to make this philosophy come alive to you so that you can understand when you go to talk to people why sometimes they look at what you do and think, well, that's not really education. Education is when we put them in the seats and they learn in the seats. So I want to give you some ammunition so that you can then see what is it that we do that is so incredibly powerful between the mind and the heart. Because you draw your children in, and they are engaged in the learning, and the mind and the heart are as one, and you're creating lifelong learners until we put them in elementary school, and then many times that love begins to die. And then you get to where I am in the college setting, and I'm teaching them how to juggle, and I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a few minutes, but I'm teaching them how to juggle, and I can't get my kinesiology majors out of their seats to juggle. Kinesiology majors and juggling. So what have we done in this process? So bear with me on the philosophy for a minute, and I'll try to make it come alive to you, okay? So I'm going to start with science. This is a STEM conference. I'm going to start with the concept of philosophy. It's the mother of all sciences. It's what every other science came off of, as you can remember from your college days. Okay? In modern science, it's been dominated by three major scientists, philosophers: Francis Bacon, René Descartes, and Isaac Newton. Their philosophies permeate why we educate and teach the way we do today, and why a lot of the focus on STEM over and sometimes excluding language arts and some of the others is a problem when we try to think about education as an integrated whole. Okay, so if we look at Francis Bacon, he looked at things and he said man's conquest is taming nature. He also said women are a part of that nature, and they cannot be counted amongst the conquerors of nature. Now think about it. I want you to look around the room. We have two gentlemen and one young boy with us today that I can see, right? So that, oh, I got a few over here. I see a few men. You get lost in the sea of women here, right? So women, we are not considered scientists. We are not considered valuable in this whole process. So if you think about that philosophy and how that permeates, where do we find most early childhood? Women. So we can see some of that coming through, okay? When we look at René Descartes, and I'm going to do a little demonstration with René Descartes. He said the human body was simply a machine. So the body is just a machine. And what we have is a completely separate mind and body. The mind sits here in this machine, but the body and everything that we do with the body, all of our senses actually trick our mind. So we can't trust our body, and we can't trust the world outside there. So he talks about this thing of, I think, therefore I am. So I'm a thinking being. That's all I am, as a thinking being. So what I'm going to do is give you an idea of where this comes from, because when you look at the world today, you go, well, I know my body and my mind are together. They're in the same thing. But he's saying, no, we can't trust them. And we have to look back in time and say, okay, we didn't have tweets. We didn't have all these things where you could go Google it and figure out what's going on, right? So he did some simple little experiments. And I have this wooden spoon, and I can't bend this wooden spoon at all. I mean, it just does not bend, right? So what he did is he said, your mind and all those senses actually trick you. So when you put this in here, what do you see it do? It bends, right? Since it bends in here, we know that it doesn't bend because I can take it out and it doesn't bend, right? It's not that all of a sudden it becomes liquid or rubbery and it bends in the process here. So when he's looking at this, he's saying, you can't trust your senses. This is one example of not trusting your senses. Here's another one, okay? And I'm going to take these. And Juanita told me she uses these things all the time for counters, which I thought was kind of a cool thing. So I have these little glass things. And I'm going to pour them in here. My suitcase weighed a ton when I was carrying it. My husband said, what? You're only going overnight. What's the problem here that it weighs so much? Okay, so here we have this. Is this full? What do you think? No. I mean, there's a little bit at the top that's not full, but what about the rest of it? Is it full? No. Okay, why isn't it full? So I should be able to fill it with something else, right? So you said water. Just so happens I have water here, right? So I can now pour this in here. And I'm not going to, because I promised Tony I wouldn't make a mess here. Okay, so except for the top, is it full? Okay, so some of you are going, yep, it's full. Can't put anything more in it, right? I could probably, I've got some sand up here, but for time's sake, I won't pour it in there. But I could put sand in and fill it. I could put water in it. It is full. It looks full. Our senses tell us it's full. But we know differently if we think about science today. And I'll come back to that here in just a minute. So he's saying that everything tricks us out there in the real world. So that's where this philosophy comes from, that the mind is the most important thing because you can't trust your senses at all. Okay? And then we have Isaac Newton. And in Isaac Newton, he said that the clock was created by God and it just keeps ticking. He says that the world's smallest pieces are atoms. And then we have all these parts to the atoms we knew that we had protons and neutrons, electrons. We have all these things, and my dad's a nuclear physicist, and so I learned all about these things firsthand. And so we know that they exist and they bounce around in the world, they make up things. But what scientists are saying today is that it's not about how they're bouncing, it's about the spaces in between. And so those spaces in between are looking very different. So when we look at science today, science is very different than how it was looked at during this time. But if you looked at it, everything is based on measurements, controlled experiments. So you have these controlled experiments. If you remember back to George W. Bush's time, he put in a Secretary of Education who believed that all education, everything that was taught had to be proven empirically. We had to have research. We had to use controlled experiments. Now I want you to think about your classrooms right now. I want you to think about, I'm going to have a control group, I'm going to have an experimental group, and one group's going to get something, one group's going to get something a little bit different, and then we're going to try to see, does this program work or does this program work? We're going to play around with those, right? Try thinking about it in a classroom. How are you going to make that happen in early childhood? Not going to happen. It's not going to happen in most cases. That permeated education. It permeated how we even funded what was available for education at that point in time. Now, thank goodness we've moved beyond that. We've put that away a little bit. But the whole notion about that we have to prove that this works still permeates what we do. Newton's theories were really important because they led to, and if you look at the right-hand side over there, that is actually some of the first computers. Now look at those computers in your hand right now, and you look over here, the one on the watch, and we know that they can make computers even smaller than that. My dad worked on some of the very first computers that were out there, so I had an opportunity to see those firsthand as a child. But it's amazing to see the growth in that, okay? So it's impacted science education. Science education is very important. Math education is very, very important for the future of our world, for the future of our country. However, we have to think about how does that affect what we do. Right now, all of these people, and I won't go through what they said, but all of these people talk about the body as a machine. Everything we do is about a machine. I want you to have that picture in your mind about a machine. You're working with children and it's a machine. That's how people are thinking about them when they talk about how people learn. And so when we take this view, most of us have been affected by that in our culture. This Western culture of science has impacted us. It shapes how we teach, what we teach, and what is funded. That's why early childhood doesn't receive much. It's not science. It's not science. We do science, we do math, but it's not science, it's not math. If we look at the state of Washington, a couple of years ago, one of the things that was going through WSU that we were hearing through the state legislatures, at one point they were talking about giving a tuition break to any student that went into STEM versus going into something else. And for people like me, who my background is in ethics as well, I'm asking the question, if we put people out there who can build it, but have no understanding of the moral implications of it, what does that mean? That's a pretty scary thing. Florida right now is trying to decide, are we going to put out there these genetically engineered mosquitoes to take out the female mosquitoes? Has anybody thought about the moral implications of what that means? What does that mean in terms of the whole life cycle? Okay? So the whole notion about only STEM, it's important, but it's not the only way to think about education. Dualism affects everything that we do. The mind and the body separate. I'm a kinesiologist. When people say, what is your degree in? I say kinesiology, and they go, oh. And why do they go, oh? Because I'm of the body. It's not important. My dad's a nuclear physicist, studied with 7 Nobel laureates at UC Berkeley in the 1950s. That was the hub of nuclear physics. I got a PhD in philosophy and a PhD in kinesiology philosophy. And you look at it, you go, oh, well, that's not very important. However, it's that mind-body dualism, okay? Now, in physical education, how it plays out is we are a machine, and we are going to make you better and more fit. This is my sister on the bike, and she was doing the Ironman in Coeur d'Alene a couple of years ago. And this woman will run around Mount Hood in a day. She's a machine. That's the way she describes herself. I'm a machine. I'm going to be fit. She does those kinds of things. I'm like walking up and down our hill trying to get fit, and she's running around the hill for 40 miles, okay? But we need to make it bigger and faster and stronger. That's what kinesiology is about. And that's what we're putting out there in the world today. We're thinking about the body. I have to teach my kinesiologists not to think about the body, but to think of the sum total of the mind and the body in here, okay? So part of me asks is all-knowing mind-knowing and separate body-knowing? So is the knowing that we have only of the body, or is it the mind only, or is it something in some kind of embodied way? So I want you to do something here for a second to get this idea. Put your pencils down for a second so you have 2 hands. I said this to my nephew one day. I said, you know, I want you to have your 10 fingers out. And he goes, but Aunt Jan, I have 11. And he does. He has an extra finger over here. So I was like, okay, well, this is not going to work exactly how I wanted it to. But I want you to take your 2 hands. I want you to push them together. Just touch them very lightly, okay? And then, while they're touching, I want you to push really hard. Push as hard as you can possibly push on those fingers. Push, 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 push. Okay, now relax again, okay? When you do that, which hand is touching which hand? Is your right hand touching your left hand, or is your left hand touching your right hand? Well, it's doing something, right? The right hand's touching the left's touching the right. Now, we do this with children, and we can get them to relax. You know, we can do this, and we can do these kind of things. We can get them to relax, and then they're ready to learn, right? But when you're thinking about this, how many of you ski? Only a few handfuls up here ski? Okay, those of you who ski, the rest of you are going to have to imagine this. But those of you who are skiing, when you've had the most phenomenal experience skiing, and you're going down the hill, the most phenomenal experience you've ever had skiing, think about what your ski's doing. Now, mine was skiing in waist-deep snow that was light and fluffy. They call it snorkel skiing, because when you ski, it's coming over the top of you, and you got to have a snorkel out back to breathe because you can't see. The snow is just billowing up over the top. So I'm skiing down through this, and there's a group of people with me, and we're skiing down through it. And it takes us about 10 minutes to get to the bottom. And the whole time that I'm down there, I'm like, wow, this is an incredible experience. And I get to the bottom, and I was trying to figure out, was my snow a part of the ski, or was the ski a part of the snow? Was I a part of the ski and the snow a part of me? Where does one end and where does one begin? It's this embodied experience. It's something you can't separate out and go, oh, that was incredible. That's my mind speaking, my body going, oh yeah, that really was. It is all one kind of thing. Okay? So the philosopher in me, this little gadfly over here, says, just because education is of the mind, the way we're teaching it, is that really what we should be doing? What ought we really be doing here? So I'm looking at this a little bit differently. So I'm a philosopher, and I drive them crazy. So the goal that I have, and I want you to think about here as we look at Smart Kids today, and you, in a workshop, will have an opportunity to see and we'll have some kids helping out, and I'm going to invite some of you up to do it, is overcoming the intellectual versus the muscular barrier. I want us to think about this not as separate things, that I'm really working on the mind knowing. I want us to think about this as this embodied experience, okay? And what this does is this impacts how we teach. So how we teach impacts how we value what we learn. If we put you in a seat, like I'm doing right now, and not having you move, that affects how we learn, how we value what we learn. If we take moving beings and put them in sedentary seats, it impacts how they learn and what they value about learning. What we value impacts the choices that we make. So those things are all about value in this process. I truly believe, and there are plenty of philosophers like myself who believe that the mind and body are not separate. We are fully human, connected beings that flow in and through and around in our world. All things flow. We are a part of our environment, and our environment is a part of us. Our mind and our body and our hearts are all of one as we move and we learn in our world, not just in our classrooms, but in our world. The issue that we have is more about how we teach. I truly believe most people, when they teach and are working with individuals, truly believe that we are one, but how we actually teach it is not that way. I think and move. I am a moving being in the world. I get to play for a living. When people say, what do you do? I play. And if I say I play, they go, oh, well, you're not really working, right? But I'm fortunate. I get to do those things. Okay? I can't know without knowing in, through, and with my mind and body as one. I can't separate them out no matter what I do. Now, the easiest way to think about this, that's me in a younger day. No, just kidding. I cannot dance. I'm trying Zumba these days, and I'm the world's worst at it, but I have the most amount of fun. I dance to live, I dance to breathe, I dance to be free, I dance to be me. We can see it in dance. It's very easy. Well, let's see it in the classroom, because I think the same dance that we do there is that dance of us as beings in the world. So our challenge is to reconnect the mind and the body in teaching. So we have a series of things that we do in this Smart Kids program that actually connect the mind and the body as one. It's something that is not new at all. What I'm going to ask as a philosopher is probably different than what you all ask. What I'm going to ask is, who am I as a teacher? We have to know who you are. Who am I? Am I a moving being in the world? If I'm a moving being in the world, my children will move. If I'm a sedentary person, my children will be sedentary. So we have to think that way. Who is my learner? My learner's a mover. If my learner's a mover, that's the way we think, right? If my learner has to sit and we have to be confined to things, that's who our learner is. What should be taught? We all know what should be taught. But that what should be taught changes. And then the epistemological questions, how do I learn? Who am I as a learner? How do I learn? How do I know I learn, right? And how should it be taught? Those things are all the questions that you as educators probably ask but never thought about metaphysically or epistemologically. But who are you as a teacher defines who you are as a learner and defines who everybody else is a learner. So that's something you have to think about. So one of my favorite sport philosophers is R. Scott Kretschmar. He's out of Penn State University. He writes a wonderful book called The Practical Philosophy of Sport, and he talks about the mind-body dichotomy. And he has these kind of 5 pieces that I'm going to lead right into Smart Kids here in just a second. Physical influencers are always at work shaping all that we know and do. So there are physical influences around us all the time. We have physical moving bodies around us, and then we have the physical things moving. Influences of consciousness are always at work. People are not unconscious. They are beings that are conscious. These workings have no complete independence from one another. They're not separate. They are all of one. We will have to depict different levels of behavioral intelligence, and I'm going to show you a demonstration of that here in a second. Depicts different types of activities. Those things all come into play. All actions show greater and lesser degrees of intelligence or insight. So when you look over here on the left and you see the dunk, it's not any less or any more intelligence than what we have over here on the right, which I can't even begin to understand, but I know Juanita understands. I tried to find the most complicated formula for me, and that was the most complicated formula. I have no idea even what these things are. But they each take a different kind of intelligence, but it doesn't put one above the other, because in order to dunk, there's a complex set of cognitive motor functions that happen. Just as if when you go to do this, there's a complex set of actions, motor and otherwise, in order to make this happen. Okay, so could there be some criteria other than the mind and the body that influence what we do? So we have the mind and the body, that's where everybody talked about it. But is there something in this space in between that is what this is about? So can we improve the picture map? Okay? So this is a group of kids at St. Mary's School. We painted a map out on the playground. It's a beautiful, beautiful map. And we have it oriented so that it's going north the way it needs to be. We have everything that is, Alaska's the right size relative to the rest of the United States. And we actually do activities out on the map. We teach them the states by moving with fundamental motor skills on the states. They do all sorts of activities. The concept behind Smart Kids is that when we go to learn how to do things, we learn cognitively differently than we learn motor-wise. So I want you to think about the first time you got on a bicycle and you rode it without training wheels. Remember that? Mom and Dad probably hanging on to it. They're running along with you, go, go, go. And then they shove you and watch what happens, right? It's kind of like the first time that my friend's mom taught her how to swim. She doesn't know how to swim herself, so she throws Sharon out there into the pond and says, swim, Sharon, swim. And Sharon swam for her life to get back in, right? So that's the same thing that happens with this. But then what happens is the more we practice motor skills, we overlearn those motor skills. So we get this big picture map out there, this huge picture map, so that you can actually see. I can remember back to the first times I was riding a bike. You probably all can if you think about it. And you get on a bike, if you've not ridden a bike in 20 years, you can get on a bike. You might be just a little bit shaky, but within about 10 seconds, you're riding the bike without any trouble at all. Your body has that. Your mind and the body as one have that. It's a huge picture map, okay? And then what happens is we all did this, right? Every one of us were like, woohoo, watch me go, and you got your feet up and you're just moving along. So we get to the point where we can do a very complex motor kind of task because we have overlearned that motor task, okay? But cognitively, it's very, very different. So when we look at this cognitively, there we go. When we look at this cognitively, we know it's there, but we can't get it to come out. The older I get now, I'm almost 56, the older I get, the harder it is to pull some of these things out. But cognitively, they're laid down differently. They're in there, but the loop to be able to bring those back is very different. So the concept behind Smart Kids is, can we marry these things together in physical cognitive tasks so that the picture map becomes much larger? So that when they go to draw back what a state is on the map, or to do multiplication task or division task or addition or sight words, that they have a picture in this bodily way of drawing it back. So that's the concept behind it. It's to look at it not just sitting at a desk doing flashcards, but can we take all of these things back together? So this is Pam Weimer. She's the 3rd grade teacher and also assistant principal of this school. She said to me one day, you know, Jennifer, I really want to do this, but I have no idea how to do it. I truly believe this is how kids learn, but I have no idea how to do this. I said, well, I think I have an idea how to make this work. So we went out and we managed to get some equipment. We used PE equipment to start with. And then we did this really kind of unique thing where at Christmas time, parents are always wanting to give gifts to teachers. And the teachers are saying, why don't we just ask the parents to donate something to Smart Kids so that we can purchase equipment that's specifically for Smart Kids? So we put a little Christmas tree in the foyer and we had little $2 slips on it. And we said, if you want to donate to floor spots or to balance beams or to cup stacks or whatever, just take one of these and add $2 and then hand it to them in the office. We managed to raise about $500. We were able to purchase a number of things, and parents still gave to teachers, but they were more than willing to give to the program, because they were liking what they were seeing. But we're integrating these cognitive tasks with these motor tasks. And so what we do is we take and we put them in activities where they are moving and they are doing flashcards at the same time. Now, this is not complex thinking and reasoning. This is all first order types of things. What the concept is for us is that we want them to have instantaneously those first order things. They need to be able to read those sight words if you want their reading to be, so they can have good comprehension with their reading. You need them to be able to do multiplication, division, subtraction, and division, I guess. You want them to be able to do those things right off the bat so that you can get them to do complex tasks so they're not confused with these tasks here so that they can't even get into the reasoning tasks over here. And what we've done is pulled those out of many of the schools today. The way in which we teach math is we pull that away and we say it's all about reasoning first. As we work with kids, if they got the other, they seem to move quicker through, okay? So the things that work well are to take these kind of flashcards, any kind of flashcards like this. We have state flashcards. You can make flashcards. We've made a lot of flashcards. But anything that has a rhythm and a cadence with it. So we will have them walk a balance beam, and I've got some kids that are going to be walking balance beams, and some of you guys can walk balance beams. We got BOSU balls. And so they're standing and doing balance tasks on these things, and then they'll go 3 plus 4 is 7. 5 times 9 is 45. So they do the full equation instead of just saying 45, 7. They have to do the full equation. So they see the equation in their head. They see it on a flashcard. So they're walking a balance beam. They've got to walk and look at that card. They can't look at their feet. And I'll show you some things with the research here in just a second. But just in terms of a qualitative way of thinking about it, the third graders spent a month on the balance beam working on these states and out on the states themselves. And they were actually able to get 100% recall in every kid but one in that 4-week period of time, and it normally takes considerably longer. Memorization begets memorization. The more we do, the better you get at memorization. However, the picture map, if you look at the map itself and trying to bring it back, if you don't know those states, you're going to get them all confused up there in New England very, very easily. They were not getting them confused at all, okay? Then they were able to go in and do a bones unit, and they memorized 22 bones in 7 days. And that's never happened before. And they could come back later and bring them back. Okay? They are a little fuzzy sometimes, but then what we do is we put them in the task. So if they've forgotten it a little bit, we put them out on the task, and boom, it comes right back. It's just like that motor task that we were talking about with riding a bicycle. Okay? We did a study with 206 3-year-old to 7-year-olds, not at this school, but at another school over in Seattle. 79% of the variability in their motor skills was accounted for perceptually. So at perceptual awareness, motor skills was really, really important for that. This is not consistent with a lot of the literature, but that's what we were finding in ours. 43% of the variability of motor skills was accounted for in their quantitative. And then if we look at it relative to their verbal scores, 56% and 53% in memory. It's a huge component of learning is what it is showing. We need to have people learning and moving at the same time because it really is impacting how they are able to put things together here. Okay? And the most part, balance appears to contribute twice as much in these prediction equations as opposed to any upper body kinds of activities. So standing on one foot, standing on another foot, standing on a balance beam, standing on a BOSU ball, all those things are important for balance. We can see, I've had people ask me, well, will this work for adults? Will this work with people who are elderly? I think it would. I think it would because I don't think the body changes in terms of this connection of mind and body the older we get. We just get a little bit less balance. So what do we find? Kids love it. Parents love it. I have parents that'll say this phrase down here, I don't care what the research says, my kids come home doing it. They'll sit on those Pilates balls and they'll do flashcards with their siblings. They'll find a way to do balanced things and they're walking along a fence doing the same thing. They're finding different kinds of ways of doing it and they love it, which means they're learning. They're engaged. It's a lifelong learning process. It's the head and the heart. That's what we're trying to get at, okay? The kids are saying, these kind of things, you get to learn while doing something fun. I turned to Smart Kids activities into competitions against my classmates. We especially enjoyed learning states by jumping around on the map. I only knew like 4 states, but now I know all 50, and she had a real big grin on her face, okay? Yesterday, I'm talking to my husband. He's out walking. That's our son on the left, my husband on the right. And he's walking to lose weight. He says, round is a shape. And so I'm kind of chuckling. I'm like, yeah, okay. So he's out walking, trying to lose some weight. And he's trying to build, we've got a garage, and he's trying to figure out how he's going to attach the garage now to the house, because we have a manufactured home, and they don't look like and aren't built like a regular house. So he said, I'm out there walking, and all of a sudden it came to me. And he's doing this complex task in his head while he's walking. He came home and he drew it, and it's what needs to be done. So there's something about this connection. No matter where you are, you can be doing this kind of thing. Just so happens I had a picture. I couldn't believe I had a picture of him walking. So what does this mean for you all? What this says is that you need to keep doing what you're doing. Keep moving with your children. But what you can do is integrate some of these tasks I'm going to show you in a workshop, and then you can build on those, because we become more and more creative every time that we're doing Smart Kids. And what was really cool was when I left school, I dropped our son off on Thursday morning, and so I'm running through the Smart Kids closet, and I'm trying to get all this equipment to throw into the truck, and I wanted to bring floor spots, because there's really cool things you can do with floor spots, and I can't find floor spots anywhere, and I wanted to bring some balls, and I couldn't find them. And so I run around talking to different teachers, and Danette's a kindergarten teacher, and she said, Jennifer, you can't have those. I'm using those today. You can't have them. And I'm like, great. I can't do my workshop because you're using them. That is such a wonderful thing. They don't want me to take these things. It's integrated in the kindergarten, but it's throughout the school. One kid came running up to me and said, Mrs. Beller, when are we going to do Happy Kids? And I'm kind of laughing. I'm thinking, okay, Smart Kids, Happy Kids. So that's the name of the talk here. So when we're looking at these kinds of things, you can use anything and be creative with it. We have older kids working with younger kids doing these tasks on it, and the older kids love it in the process. But you want to add balance activities in. Add any kind of motor eye-hand activities with the cognitive, anything you can do. One of the things we do is we take a mirror, and we put a mirror up, and we put a board across, and then we have a little picture underneath, and they got to color the picture by looking in the mirror. Now, you all try that. It is a very complex task. This has been so successful in this school that we've had 2 afternoon enrichment days where we've had 130 kids doing these activities all at once in the gymnasium and throughout the hallways, and every single child is on task. And we have them age appropriate, and the older kids are like, well, I want to do what the younger kids are doing too. And they're fighting to be able to do those things. But you can be very creative. I'm at Washington State University, and you can contact me there, and I can give you lots of ideas, but you have a lot of creativeness in your own minds. You work with these children. You know what you can do. Once you've seen a few of these things, you can go, oh, I can improve on that, and I know you can make it happen. Okay? So our ultimate goal, and I will end this with this, our ultimate goal is that we are embodied learners. Our head and our hearts are as one. And if we are moving beings, our children will be moving beings. And so we need to carry that mantra with us, and we need to work with developmentally teachers as we move along the spectrum to find ways to integrate it. Because at first, all these teachers were just a little bit like, well, I don't think I have enough time. I'll try. We'll see what happens. And the person that I thought was going to be least likely to carry the mantra, every day, she's like, are you coming today, Jennifer? Yeah, I'll be there today. I can't wait to be over there. I'll bring my students over. People want to see it happen. When I left, the 4th grade teacher said, I can't get it in there. I want to figure out how to get this in. So I said, when I come back, we're going to figure out next week how we're going to build this in. And one of the things that we do with hers is we actually do Smart Kids with science, and we use the human body to teach physics principles. And we do really cool things with physics principles in that manner. So it's all about being creative and how do we put those things together. So I want to leave you with this last thought about embodied learning. Think about, what can I do to be a moving being, and how do I let that then be the mantra of keeping people being moving beings at the same point, and not think about that what we do is mind and body separate. It's not that we can't learn by sitting, but we need to be learning by engaging across the way. You've been wonderful. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Beller. That was great. Always good reminders that, yes, our mind is connected to our body, and have lots of personal connection with why are they cutting PE out of the schools? That's a whole nother story. So we are at the point